I am Jennifer Niven, and it is such a pleasure to be here tonight. I want to say thank you so much to everyone who is here, and I'm very excited for the evening to come. So on behalf of Y'all Fest, welcome to First Love's First Times, First YA Book Obsessions, a conversation with Judy Blume and Caitlin Kinnunen. Before I gush over how excited I am to be here tonight, I want to introduce these two remarkable people, and maybe they will join me on screen for their introductions. Hi, Caitlin. Oh, this is so exciting. I'm going to say that 100 times tonight, so please bear with me. And I want to introduce, as I said, these two remarkable people. Judy Blume. Yay.
Oh, hello.
Hello. Judy Blume spent her childhood in Elizabeth, New Jersey, making up stories inside her head. She has spent her adult years in many places doing the same thing, only now she writes her stories down on paper. Fortunately for us, adults as well as children will recognize such Blume titles as Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, Blubber, Just as Long as We're Together, and the 5-book series about the irrepressible Fudge. She has also written 4 novels for adults in The Unlikely Event, Summer Sisters, Smart Women, and Wifey, all of them New York Times bestsellers. More than 80 million, think about that number for a minute, copies of her books have been sold, and her work has been translated into 31 languages. She receives thousands of letters a year from readers of all ages who share their feelings and concerns with her. Caitlyn Kennen is an actress based out of New York City. She has appeared on Broadway in The Prom, originating the role of Emma Nolan and earning a Tony nomination for Best Lead Actress in a Musical. She has also been seen in The Bridges of Madison County, Spring Awakening, on the first national tour of Next to Normal, and in numerous film and television projects, including The Intern, It's Kind of a Funny Story, Sweet Little Lies, Younger, American Vandal, The Nick, and Law and Order SVU. And I am Jennifer Niven, author of several books, but I have written 4 novels for young adults: All the Bright Places, Holding Up the Universe, the recently released Take Me With You When You Go, which I co-wrote with the wonderful David Levithan, and Breathless, which was my tribute to Forever, which we are going to be talking about tonight. Now, we are going to be taking audience questions. So toward the end of the conversation, they will be answering your questions. So please send us your questions in the chat. Now, just to kind of start us off, Judy and Caitlin, if you don't mind just mentioning your current project, that would be a wonderful way to start the evening.
Caitlin, you start.
All right, I will. Thank you. My current project is one that I'm very excited about. I'm working on a children's musical that has been written by my friend called Rescue Roo, which is about a rescue chihuahua and her journey to find her forever home. So I'll be doing that in New York off Broadway, December and January, and I'm really looking forward to it.
So exciting.
Great.
Wonderful.
Do we know yet that Caitlin is the wonderful person who has done the audiobook of Forever, or are we talking about that later?
We are talking about it, but I think we cannot mention it enough, Judy.
Okay.
We cannot mention it enough.
Well, okay. So my current project is a bookstore, and it is it's wonderful and thrilling, and I love it. And it will be 6 years old in February, because after my last book was published, which was In the Unlikely Event, that book took 5 years, and and a lot out of me, although I do feel it's one of the books that I was meant to write. And it seemed a very good place after 50, that's 50 guys, 50 years of writing. It seemed the perfect place for me to say, okay, you know, I've said what I want to say in all those books. And now I want to be out there talking about other people's books. And so the bookstore is creative and exciting and really thrilling. So, and then I will just say that it is a thrill that you are doing Forever, the audiobook, because Forever has never been an audiobook. And I think, you know, people were afraid before now to be able to do this. And so it's, talk about exciting. It's exciting for me that this is happening now.
It was exciting for me as well. I think it's fantastic.
Well, this is just, you know, and Judy, that just leads us right into the first question that was perfectly timed. You know, what is it like having Forever finally be available on audio for the first time? I mean, that it must be just so many things all at once.
It is so many things all at once. It is. I mean, I used to think, how could that ever be done? You know, how could anybody possibly, I don't know what you call it, narrate, read, record Forever, which is such an intimate story, and you know, with a lot of intimate sections to it. Who is going to feel comfortable doing it? But obviously, Caitlin did, and she has done a great job.
She's done an amazing, she really truly has. And Forever, I have my very dog-eared copy here.
Oh, look at that copy. That's not the first paperback edition, but it came in there close, maybe 80s. Is it 80s? I don't know.
It's the 80s.
You know, that young woman on the cover, hold it up for a second. I was doing a book signing once, and a young woman came up to me and she said, I am the model who was used on the cover of your book, Forever. There she was, a real person.
Amazing. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Talk about coming in a way full circle.
Of course, it doesn't look like that anymore.
No. but I mean, how thrilling and how exciting to be reintroducing this book to a new audience in 2021 in the audio version. And I don't know, I would love to hear both of you talk about, you know, just how that feels.
I mean, for me, it was absolutely incredible, you know, to have known of this book, have read this book, to know so many people who this book means so much to, and to be able to incorporate it into an audiobook for the next generation it's amazing, because it just means that so many more people will have access to it and younger generations will be able to find it easily. And it meant the world to me. And I love that more people get to experience this novel now.
Thank you, Caitlin. Yeah, you know, because I have the bookstore and people come in and they say, you know, do you have copies of your books? And it's like, yes, I do. And do you have Forever? And it's like, yes, I do. I have Forever. And, you know, there's a lot of tears and a lot of emotion with people who remember reading it. And they all have Forever stories to tell me. And, you know, everyone is special. Everyone remembers exactly where she or he was at the moment that they were reading the book. And there's often a story about the book being taken away from them by a teacher or a parent or something. So yeah, so again, I think it's great that we've landed in a place where Forever can be an audiobook. We love audiobooks. George and I, my husband and I, we listen to audiobooks all the time. And everything about an audiobook is dependent on the person who's reading it, really. I mean, a good reader can turn you on in any book. And a less good one can just say, nah, I'm not going to do this.
It's a lot of pressure.
No pressure. But I know I heard you. I'm not putting any pressure on you. It's great, and we're really excited. I don't even know when it's coming out. When is it coming out on audio? It's out. It's out.
In the world.
It's out.
Yes.
It's out. Yeah.
Yay, it's all done. It's ready.
That prompts me to ask, Judy, what you were just saying about pressure, but that just prompts me to ask Caitlin, did you feel any pressure? I mean, this book is, as you know, hugely iconic to generations of people. And I would love to know, did you feel the pressure of that as you were going into it? I mean, you're
incredibly so, but in such a good and fun way. It just felt like, I don't know, you're Judy Bloom, and I get to record your book for forever, literally and figuratively. And it was very nerve-wracking. I was like, this is a big deal. This is exciting. But it's such a wonderful book, and it's obviously so well written that it made my job really easy, because it was just perfect. And I got to step in and tell this beautiful story. And now it's out there, and I can relax and be like, okay, I did my thing. It's over. It's done. We got it. But it was nerve-wracking. There was a lot of pressure, but in a good way.
I'll bet not when you were into it and actually reading it.
Yeah.
Before, yes. But then you're into it, and it's just, I mean, the voice is that of Catherine, who's 18.
And the process of recording an audiobook is in itself so intimate. It's you and your engineer in this little booth, and you just have the book in front of you. And so it is that you get transported to another world, because it just becomes you and the words, and that's it. So yeah, nervous before, but during, we got this.
Well, the first time I recorded a book, it was a fudge book. I recorded all the fudge books. And so I had never done this before. I'm not trained to do it. And I'm in that little booth with the engineer, and I'm reading. And as I'm reading, I'm improving it. I'm making it better, making little changes here and there, which is why I always tell writers, the best thing you can possibly do is read your work aloud. And so I'm changing it because it sounds so much better. And the engineer is tap, tap, tap on the glass, and then, cuts it off and comes in and says to me, you can't do that. You have to read it exactly the way it's written. And I, knowing nothing, say, but, I'm the author and I'm making it better. And he's like, no. Too late, not the right time.
Oh my God.
You have to read it exactly as it is, right? Exactly as it is.
I would love to hear, the version that's printed, Judy, but then to have heard, I think they should have released them side by side, but this is Judy's version.
I didn't get very far. I didn't get past the first few pages, But it is the best way to hear your own work when you're writing, and really, really listen with a pencil. And I guarantee you will make many, many changes for the better.
It is so true. And that's always the last step I do in the editing process, is to read it aloud, because you hear things. And I'm finding this is true in the audiobooks, because I've just started listening to audiobooks this past year and just love them. And you hear things in a different way. It's just a whole different experience from reading it on the page. And I love being able to do that. It brings the book alive in a different way. I would love to talk about, the fact that this book is such a phenomenon and will continue to be for generations to come. I mean, I read this book in my teens. Judy, I might have shared this with you in an email, but I told my mother years later I had hid it under, hidden it under my mattress so that she couldn't find it and find out I was reading it, which was part of the fun of, reading forever. And she said, "Oh, well, I would have let you read that." And it just took, it didn't take the fun away because I still love the book, but the fact that she said she would have given it to me to read because she loved the book as an adult. And the fact that now I have young readers of my own who I know are reading it, it's just, it's amazing. And the impact it's had on generations. So I think, what is it, do you think, and this is for either of you, but what is it, do you think is so impactful about this book?
I'm the wrong one to ask. You have to
Caitlin,
ask, you have to ask the reader. You have to ask the reader that, or, I don't know. I mean, there are reasons for writing books, and my reason for writing forever is one of the worst reasons for writing a book, I think. My daughter was a teenager. She was a young teenager, and she was reading a lot of books that linked sex with punishment. If a girl succumbs and does this terrible thing, she is going to be punished in some way. That, this was back in the 70s, maybe early 70s, I don't know. And so I thought, what a terrible message to send to kids. And I decided that I wanted to write a book about well, she asked me, "Mom, couldn't there be a book about two nice kids who do it and nobody has to die?" That's basically what she said. And I thought, yes, of course we should do that. I should do that. A book about two decent kids who fall in love and have sex, responsible sex, and the girl enjoys it. I think that was the big thing. I know you're going to ask me about book banning and everything, but that was the big thing, that a girl should be allowed to enjoy her sexuality in a book, was like, no, we can't have this.
And that's just, I feel like, I feel like there's still some of that today, unfortunately, but I feel like Forever really came along at a very pivotal time and just broke the door down in a way that needed to be done.
Well, I'm glad.
And this leads me to the banning, because as you just mentioned, the book has been banned and censored. And why, I so agree that talking about sex from a female point of view, birth control, is so important. And so I think you've just answered my next question, which was, the inspiration for the book.
Yes, that was the inspiration.
Yeah.
And Catherine in the book is very lucky to have a grandmother who talks about everything with her, brings her pamphlets from Planned Parenthood. And I guess, somewhere in the back of my mind, I was thinking, well, that's the kind of grandmother I want to be someday. I don't know. Bless you.
That is amazing.
And, you're really lucky when you have someone in your life that will talk to you about the pleasures and the pitfalls and the whole thing. So
and I feel like in both in your book life as a writer, when we write for readers, it's so important to be honest about these kinds of things and to treat them with great responsibility, which I learned from you as a writer. And I feel like, of course, that also pertains to, to life outside the books. And I know so many people who have given forever to their teenager, just knowing that the teenager is in very safe hands with this book. And I think that's just the biggest.
Well, I think if you can give that book to your teenager and you can be there to talk to your teen after, by the time young people are teens, they kind of go underground with those feelings. So if you're going to be that kind of askable parent, you have to start way earlier with those first questions, like where do babies come from? How did the baby get in there? All of those questions, simple answers to the point, so that when they are teenagers, when your hormones are going and you're having these feelings yourself, you might not want to talk to your parents about it. And that's okay, as long as, they have been there to talk to you and you know that you can always go to them if you want to. And not everybody is that lucky. So, we have to
offer something. David Levithan calls it being ambassadors of empathy. And
love that.
I love that too. I think that phrase is just, it's perfect. And Caitlin, I'd love to know, what was your experience with Forever before you were chosen to do the narration?
My experience with it was, I think, very similar to others, that I had read it when I was younger and was like, oh my God. But it was wonderful because I am very fortunate and grew up in a family where we did have those conversations. We did talk about things before they were issues, before I was a puberty-ridden teen being like, what? So it fell in line with like everything that my parents had been telling me. And I was like, okay, it is okay to talk about these things. And I think one of the things that's done so beautifully with the book is that it, for those teens and children who are going to read it and don't have that relationship with their parents, it gives them the insight that there are other people out there who will have those conversations with them. There's the grandmother figure, there is everyone out there, and this wonderful human wrote a book about it. So obviously there are people out there who are going to talk to you about it, and it kind of just like opens your world to, oh, we can talk about this. It's not weird. It's not shameful. This is totally normal. Let's have the conversation. So that was my experience with it.
And just starting those discussions, having those discussions, that is so, so important, as you said. I would, kind of shifting tactics for a minute, Judy, I'd love to know, to all those writers and aspiring writers, I'm sure many of whom are watching right now, who you have influenced and inspired, what would you say? Do you have any, I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but any words of writing advice or wisdom for them?
I wish. I would say first, thank you very much. And that the best thing you can do is read, and read widely, and let the books come to you and help you through this. I mean, how does anybody learn to write? It's by reading. It's because we read. And Jennifer, maybe this is a good time for me to say that your book, Breathless, which you have told me is your kind of ode to forever, is just the most wonderful book. I think a better book than Forever. My publishers may not like me saying that, but I think it's a wonderful, wonderful love story. First love, first sex, very sexy. I like sexy books. I always did. I think it's good. I think Norma Klein, one of my first writing friends, she is no longer with us. Norma used to say, reading about it is a safe way. Why do parents object? It's such a safe way to find out, to go through, to experience it without going out there and doing something and getting yourself into all kinds of trouble. Read about it. So I think writing about it, also, I mean, we write, I'm a spontaneous and I don't know what the word is. My agent had a great word for what kind of writer I am. George, you remember the word? What's the word? Anyway, it's
Pantser.
intuitive. I'm an intuitive writer. That's what I am. I can't remember, but that's what I am. So, you know, it doesn't matter. Process isn't what it's about. It's about getting there. And when people come into the store and say, well, I've got this whole book and it's running around in my head and it's just like a movie, but how do you get it down on paper? One scene at a time. Because if you think of the whole book, you know, it's just too scary. It's one little scene at a time. And that's how you do it. And it takes a long time and it's hard work. But you only do it if you have to do it. So we who have to do it, right?
Absolutely. It's in you to do it and you can't not do it.
That's it.
And I have to thank you, Judy, for those beautiful words, which almost made me burst into tears.
Oh, no.
I can't tell you how much
you know, I mean it. I've told you this before. It's a wonderful, wonderful book.
And I treasure that, especially because, you know, my mom was a writer and I've told you about her and she was the most amazing woman. And I learned everything I know about writing from you and my mother. And you were the one who taught me that I could see myself on the page and I could find my experiences on the page. And I think that is something that is just so special. And I know I speak for millions of readers when I say thank you for that.
And I have to tell you all that Forever is probably my least autobiographical book. So when you ask me, you know, it's just, it's not my experience.
That is very good to know.
I mean, yes, I had early loves, of course, but I didn't have a Michael. I didn't have a Michael in my life. You know, and things were very different when I was growing up in terms of sex in the 50s. I was never told by my parents, you can't enjoy sex. I was never told that. My father used to say, someday, you know, you will so enjoy. And so no one ever said this is a bad thing. And that I think was very good, that I wasn't told that it was anything to be ashamed about, you know, and it was just something good that was worth waiting for.
And that's so wonderful, as Caitlin was saying, having that kind of support. My mother was like that as well. And I always knew I could talk to her about it. And I think, you know, that makes such a difference because I think that's just not, you know, the typical, I don't think that's typical and which makes books like Forever so much more important. And I think this might be a good time to have Caitlin read a part of the book out loud, which is
Okay. So I'm going to set this scene up for you very quickly. All right. So we have Catherine and Michael are seniors in high school. They're 18. They fall in love. They get to know each other while they're falling in love, so that they really, really care about each other. And it's, you know, and they do discuss sex. They do decide to become sexually active. But again, they're responsible. And so Catherine goes to a Planned Parenthood and she gets, I think in those days it was the pill, right? Is that what she's on the pill, I think. That was a long time ago. But you know, some things never change. I mean, first love, first sex, this goes from generation to generation. I mean, you know, it's a first is always a first. Anyway, they are deeply in love when the summer comes along, summer before they go to college. And Catherine's parents find her a job as a tennis counselor at a camp in, where is it, Caitlin? Is it in New Hampshire? It's in New England somewhere.
Yes.
And Michael is going to work, I think, for an uncle in Virginia or somewhere. I don't remember exactly where. They're going, the point is that they're going to be separated.
Mm.
And, you know, is this love that they call forever? Is it the kind of love that can last when you're 18 years old? And what happens when you find out that although you deeply love this person, you are attracted, you are sexually attracted to someone else? What happens? So Caitlin, I give it to you.
All right. Sometimes I dream that Michael and I are making love. I can understand that. But in the middle of the night after the movie, I woke up drenched with perspiration and ashamed, more ashamed than I've ever been in my life. I dreamed I was with Theo. It was so real. I could smell him, taste him, feel him, and I wanted him so much. I did things to him that I have only read about. I wrote Michael a 4-page letter the next day to keep my mind where it belongs. I stayed as far away from Theo as I could. Even so, I knew there was something growing between us, something I was afraid to even think about. Every night from 8 to 10, the canteen is open and the campers can hang out in there, listening to music, dancing, and getting snacks. Theo dances with the younger kids, like Jamie, but avoids the older ones, like Marcia. You can tell he's not looking for trouble. Nan doesn't dance at all. She says she has 2 left feet. That presents a real problem because dancing can be a very good way to get 2 people together. And Theo likes to dance. If only he would look at Nan the way he looks at me. If only my insides didn't turn every time our eyes met. Tonight, Marcia put on this slow song, and all the kids booed her because they prefer hard rock. They don't even know how to touch dance. But Marcia wouldn't change the record, and she came slithering over to Theo and tried to drag him to his feet. He told her, "Sorry, Marcia, but I promised this one to Kat." And he took my hand and pulled me up. I shook my head, but he didn't care. He said to the kids, "Watch carefully, and I'll show you a new way to dance." Then he put his arms around me, and the kids whistled and cheered, and Theo laughed and held me tighter. Soon, some of the kids got up to try touch dancing, and Theo started to the record from the beginning again. He's not much taller than I am, just 3 or 4 inches, and I was wearing clogs so that as we danced, our bodies came together. We didn't talk or look at each other, but there was a lot going on between us. When the record ended, I broke away from him and ran out of the canteen. I went down to the lake where it's cool and dark, and I sat on a rock and I cried. How can you love one person and still be attracted to another?
Oh my God. Caitlin's amazing.
That was so wonderful. I
Thank
can't
you.
believe I wrote that. I mean,
You did. Those are your words, and they are
you make
wonderful.
it sound so. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's absolutely breathtaking. And it's now that I've read this book so many times, but Caitlin, when I reread it, I hear you because you are her. As Judy said, you are her.
Well, thank you.
And that's truly, that's a gift for all
It's
of us.
just what you wrote, Judy, is so real And it's so honest that like, as an actor, what my job is to tell the story. And you've written something so true to life and so true to what so many people experience that you just get to like drop into it and let the words speak for themselves, because I'm pretty sure that everyone at some point in their life has felt exactly that and has asked those questions of like, what is this? What am I experiencing? So it's beautiful.
Thank you.
It really is. And I would love to know, Caitlin, and Judy, if you would like to share the story of a first love, what is something that you've experienced personally that you don't mind sharing that you saw represented in Catherine and Michael.
Caitlin.
Well, it's interesting because something that you had just said, Judy, that it's like my first love was wonderful. I had a very good experience. It was incredible. He was an amazing human being, but it lasted about a year, and then he broke up with me. And you have this like feeling of like almost the opposite of this, where it's not like, can you love more than one person, but it's like, will there be another person? Because that first love, you think that is everything. You're like, this is it. This is my person. This is what everyone feels. This is great. And then it just stops. And you're like, how do I continue? Will there be someone else? Or is this it? Was this my one love and now it's over? And then you get older and you realize you're going to be okay. It's going to be okay. There are many other options and ways. But yeah, so mine was, I think I was 20 when we started dating. I was a late bloomer. But it was wonderful. We met working together and we just were inseparable, and it was wonderful. And I'm always very grateful that like my first experience in love and in sex was a positive one, because a lot of people don't have that. So
Yes.
You
I had
are
a good one.
lucky. That's wonderful. That's so good. So good. And one of the things is, I had a son too. I had a teenage daughter, and my son must have been like, I don't know, 12. And I thought boys can be deeply hurt too, not just girls. And so I wanted in this story to tell a story where, not that they're both not hurt, but they're hurt in different ways. And Michael is terribly hurt by this, and one hopes he will get over it and move on. I'm sure that he does.
Have you ever thought, Judy, of doing, I'm sure you've been asked this a lot as well, but have you ever thought about doing a sequel to Forever?
Never. No. I mean, have I been asked? Yes, but I would never. No. I mean, that book is over. Yes, I have so many kids say, but then what happens? Calls on what I shouldn't say. No, the story is over.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And I think it ends in a beautiful place, right where the characters needed it to end. Say it that way, in case there are any people who have not yet read it, but I know they will after tonight.
Or they'll listen. They'll surely listen now that they heard how beautifully it's read. Oh, yeah.
And I'd love to ask both of you, I know we talked a little bit about audiobooks earlier in terms of, our actual reading habits, but I know that you enjoy listening to audiobooks. I do as well. I know a lot of people don't think it counts as reading, which I don't agree with. And what would you say to someone who's hesitant about giving audiobooks a try?
A story is a story, and taking in that story, listening to it is absolutely, to me, counts as, have you read that book? Yes. I have read that book. I've taken that book in by listening. And because we have a bookstore and, it's so hard to keep up, And George is just great because he can multitask. I really can't do that. And so he's always got his, headset on, and he's always got a book. And because of that, he reads so many, many, many books. And I count that as reading. Yes. And I think especially for, young children, when my grandson was little, I don't know, do we have time for a little story?
Yes, absolutely.
Where we are here. My grandson was little, and he was obsessed by the fudge books and the characters, and we used to have to play the fudge game, something that he invented. And he had the so he had the set of me reading the books, recording the books, and he had it in the bathtub, and he had it here and he had it there. But before he had a headset, he was just listening to them all the time. And my daughter said to me, "You don't know what it's like being a grown-up with your own home and having to hear your mother's voice day and night, day and night." And I said, "Well, Randy, get him a headset and you will not have to listen to my voice reading him these books." But, he memorized the books. He loved them. And at that time, the Ramona books were recorded by Stockard Channing. And if ever there was a great set of audiobooks, it is Stockard Channing doing Ramona. Just fabulous.
Yes.
So, some things never get old.
No, they don't. And Judy, I don't want to forget to ask you this. Can you say the name of your bookstore so that we all know?
Yes, I can say the name, of course. It's called Books and Books at the Studios of Key West, and it is in Key West. And we are a small indie bookstore, nonprofit.
Yes.
And we love to see you when you come to Key West.
I'm sure everyone is going to be rushing down there as soon as they can.
Myself included.
I think we should make a trip of it, Caitlin. We should.
Let's go.
Two of you. Yes, that would be so great.
We have some audience questions. So if it's all right with you, we'll start to answer some of these. There are a lot of wonderful questions in here. Michelle Giorlando, and I so apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name, says, "Hi, Judy. Is there anything you'd change about Forever if you were writing it today?"
It would be a totally different book if I were telling the story today. So, I'm easy on myself that way. A lot of my books were written in the 70s and, or the 80s, and they would be different. But I don't think the gut feelings in them are different. So, it's electronics make a huge difference, right? And I'm so glad that we didn't have cell phones and Facebook and all of that when I was writing. I'm glad that it was just, inside what it is.
And I think that adds to the intimate feeling of the book. JC says, "What was your favorite book to write?"
Oh, as if they were all, some books are harder than others, some births are more difficult than others. And I don't know that there was a favorite book to write. Even now when kids say, "Well, which is your favorite book?" I say to them, it's like asking a mother, "Which is your favorite child?" They're all my babies in one way or another. And I can put myself back and remember what it was like and how painful it was often to do it, which is why after 50 years, I gave myself permission to stop. So, yeah, I don't know that I have a favorite. I mean, the Fudge books were fun. Tales for Fourth Grade Nothing came more easily than any other book I had ever written. And, you know, that was just the way it was. But that doesn't make it my favorite. I like the struggle and the pain. When I look back, you know, I say that was really tough.
That I would agree with that. That's something I've been asked as well. And JC is also asking what, Caitlin, what your favorite project is that you've worked on so far. And she's asking me about mine as well. And I would love for you to go first, Caitlin.
I've had a really awesome time being an audiobook narrator. It was something that I fell into because of a musical that I was working on. So I've gotten to record, I believe, 4 audiobooks, and kind of what you just said, Judy, it's impossible to pick because they're all your babies, you know, and like each one of them has such a special quality about them that like it's impossible to pick, but like they're all fantastic and I love all of them so much. And because I am who I am, I tend to tell a lot of like coming of age stories, and it's always just fantastic listening to them all and hearing them all and reading them all and, you know, just experiencing that experience all over again and knowing that other people will be able to listen to it and enjoy it as well.
It's again being the ambassador of empathy, right?
Yes.
And I feel the same way as you both do, and it's very hard to choose. I will say All the Bright Places is the last book my mother will ever read. She died shortly before it was published, and I still have the letter she wrote me after she read it and cherish that. So that has a very special place in my heart, as does Breathless, because it's how I met my husband. So
I really want to ask you about that. I mean, is that wonderful story on the island between 2 people who meet and fall in love?
Yes, that is every adventure my husband and I had after meeting and falling in love pretty much instantly. All of those adventures in the book are ones that we had ourselves in real life. So it was a wonderful way to write a book. Because
but you weren't 18, right? You were grown up.
I was grown up when it happened, but Claude in the book is 18.
Yes.
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 Here is another question for Judy. Fred Corson would like to know, I would like to ask Mrs. Bloom how she gets her inspiration for her characters.
I don't know. You know, I can never explain this. You know, it's something that I can do. I can't do a lot of things, but I can, and I really love inventing, imagining, making up characters. And I like writing dialogue. I don't like all the other stuff that you have to write. I probably should have been a playwright, Caitlin. And hearing them talk, and that comes out spontaneously, putting them together, see what happens. So I don't know, sometimes, yeah, you're inspired by somebody that you know in real life. I mean, Fudge, you know, I got Fudge because I had this little boy who was Fudge-like, but eventually Fudge, the real Fudge, grew up, and Fudge in the books took on a life of his own. And you see things and you hear things, right, Jennifer?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you put in pieces of yourself without sometimes knowing that you're doing that. And you don't realize until maybe a reread or someone you know and love points it out to you. There are always pieces of myself sprinkled throughout there. But it's definitely, I think so much of being a writer is also you participate in life, but you also observe it. And
yes. Oh,
yes.
You can't write fiction without being a people watcher, an observer, right?
No,
Absolutely.
not at all.
it's how you, I don't, for me anyway, it's how
The same.
everything happens.
Absolutely. This is, let's see. Oh, I love this, this question. Anonymous asks, silly question, but I've always wanted to know, how did you land on the name Ralph?
Oh, I'm so sorry for all of those named Ralph. I hear from them all the time. It's like, how could you do this to me? And a darling person I know just named her baby Ralph. So it's not all bad.
That's
I
great.
don't know. You know, again, names just pop into my head, and there it is.
Well, Rachel Jennings says, not a question, but Judy, I've always wanted to tell you that The End of Forever is my favorite ever book ending. The quietness, the open-endedness, just perfect.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
And Anonymous says, what inspired you to become storytellers? This is a question for Judy in her writing career, but also Caitlin in her career as an actor.
Caitlin, go ahead.
You can go ahead.
No, you go.
It's interesting because it kind of evolves over time. That originally, like, I've been an actor for forever. I've been doing this since I was 3 years old. It's just always been what I do. But as I grow older and experience more and feel more emotions and meet new people, a quote that I heard that has resonated with me is, what if the purpose of it all is to make it easier for someone else? And I think that through storytelling and through art and through theater and through books, we can translate emotions and feelings and put them in a way that makes it easier for other people to feel them and experience them. And so that is why I do what I do. It's a translation and a door opening for communication.
That's amazing.
I think I've always been a storyteller, but I told myself the stories. And that's how I amused myself from the time I was very young. Having all these stories running around inside my head. I never let them out. I never told anybody about them, but they were always there. I bounced the ball against the brick wall of my house for hours, and all the time that my mother thought I was bouncing the ball against the wall of the house, I was making up stories. And so I guess stories were just a very important part of my life. I practiced the piano by having pretend students, and I had a notebook with all their names and information, and I would grade them after, how they played each song. It just made life for me more interesting and entertaining, and I was never bored. I had all those characters.
And they're so real, aren't they? They're just,
Oh, yeah,
they're real people.
definitely.
I think we might have time for one more question. Sonia C says, first and foremost, you are one of my all-time favorite authors, with Tales of the Fourth Grade Nothing as the first Bloom I read in fourth grade, and I haven't stopped reading since. Thank you. What is, if you can answer this, what is your favorite book you've read, Judy?
Read.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, no.
That is a hard
I
question.
can walk you through the bookstore and show you. I mean, my first favorite book that I found myself in the library, sitting on the floor of the Elizabeth Public Library in New Jersey, was Madeline. I found that book and I smelled it, and it smelled so good. And I guess I can't remember who read it to me, but obviously someone read it to me because I memorized it. And when I didn't get it right, I made it up because there was a crack on the ceiling that had the habit of always looking like a rabbit, but I made up something else because I couldn't remember it. Crack on the ceiling was so funny. It sometimes looked just like a bunny. And I never wanted to return that book. And so I hid it and wouldn't tell my mother where it was. And so she couldn't take it back. And I thought it was the only one in the world. She would have bought me my own copy, but I didn't understand at 3 or 4 that there were other copies. So I learned to love books early, and I just love them. I love the Maud Hart Lovelace books. I mean, I could go through, but now, there are so many books. And I forget, and it helps when I walk and I look at the shelves with someone who says, well, what's a good book? What did you like? And I'll say, oh, that one, or, oh, look, that one. I love that one. So there are many good books to love. And I can't really pick a favorite.
It's so hard, but I love that Madeline story. That's amazing. And unfortunately, we are at the end of our evening, and I can't believe it because it's gone so quickly, but it's just been absolutely lovely and inspiring. And before we leave, I wanted to see if you all have, last parting words for our audience before we go.
I just want to thank the two of you for making this hour go so quickly and smoothly, and you're wonderful, both of you. Thank you so much, Caitlin. I'm so honored that you read my book, recorded my book. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
And
having me.
Jennifer, thank you. Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Come to Key West and we'll do an event for your books.
Yes, let's do it. Caitlin, you must come too.
Yes,
we'll be there.
Thank you both, just with all my heart. And thank you, Y'all Fest, for making this wonderful event happen. I'm so happy that we were all brought together, and thanks to each and every reader out there and to all the writers out there. Write. And one day we'll get to read your books and hopefully record them as well.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you